Alright guys, welcome to another video. Last week I took the week off from making YouTube videos. I know I probably shouldn't do that as my channel is young, but I was reading, I was doing some research, and when I get lost in a book, I get lost in a book, and that's what I was doing. So anyway, I'll do a review on that book later on down the road, so stay tuned for that video. And guys, you know, if you like what I'm doing, please give me a thumbs up. If you don't, give me a thumbs down. It all helps the algorithm. And also subscribe if you'd like to. I think I'm up to 11 subscribers now, so hey, we're cooking. All right guys, so today we're going to talk about tariffs, and we're going to talk about kind of what's going on. I know that's a big hot topic right now, and there's a lot of speculation, a lot of things going on with the interwebs, the TikToks, the YouTubes, and everything else. And you know, we're going to debunk a few things, and we're just going to talk about a few things in a common sense way. I just kind of want you guys to think about things just a little bit differently instead of listening so much to the propaganda from both the right and the left, because the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle, right? So one of the first things that I would like to tackle on this video is this.
Just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise, because as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American.
And so everybody knows Karoline Leavitt. She did this video apparently overnight here in the Philippines, but this is what I woke up to this morning. And man, she's just blasting Amazon for putting tariff prices, you know, in their listings or whatever on Amazon. Well, if you guys have been watching my channel very long, one of the very first YouTube shorts that I did was about this very thing. And I have been living abroad for almost 4 years now. And I've been having things shipped by Amazon from the United States to the Philippines for quite some time. Now, the Philippines does have a tariff. They have an import tax anytime you reach somewhere in the realm of like $200 on a purchase, right? They will start charging you import taxes here in the Philippines, or tariffs. And so Amazon, they've been doing this ever since I've been using them here in the Philippines, at least 3 years. They always put the amount of the import tax. It's always part of it. And so watch my YouTube short here if you haven't seen it, and I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. So who actually pays for tariffs or import taxes? Well, as you can see here, I'm on Amazon. I'm going to order me a welder, and I'm going to put it in my cart. Then you're going to see, whenever I get my total here, that yes, the shipping is free, but there's an import tax. So who pays the import tax? Well, it is me, the customer. Now, I live in the Philippines, and I am having this delivered from the United States to the Philippines. So it may work a little bit different. But the bottom line is I am paying the tariff. I'm paying the tax. That's the way it works, y'all. Do you think Amazon's paying that tariff? Do you think Amazon's paying it? Yes, they're going to pay it for me, but I am going to pay the money for it. And so they take it out. It's import fees deposit is what they call it. And so when we click on the import fees deposit icon here, you'll see this is what it says. It says, here's what we found. When ordering products for international shipment, we may estimate and pay customs duties, taxes, and fees on your behalf. This is shown as import fees deposit or import charges at checkout. So guys, as you can see, Amazon's been doing this for a while. They've been doing it at least when things come from the United States to other countries, because it all kind of depends. If I order something under that $200 limit here in the Philippines, I don't get hit with import taxes. I don't. But if I order something that's above that, they put that in there. And that's to help me as a customer. You know, I want to know that sort of thing. It is possible to bust your order down to smaller increments to avoid some of these import taxes, and that's what I've had to do on some of this stuff. For instance, I've got some walkway lighting. I like buying the walkway lighting from the United States because it's built just a little bit better. Even though it's made in China, it's built for American specifications, and it's a little better quality than what you'll find here in the Philippines that comes from China. And so anyway, I wanted some all aluminum fixtures, and that's what I bought. And in order to bring my entire shipment down, I had to order them one box at a time so I could avoid that import tax. If I ordered 2 boxes of lights at a time, then they started hitting me with the import tax. And so that's why Amazon does this. This is not a new thing for Amazon, but apparently it's being made political, right? Just because it doesn't fare good for them. So Amazon's helping their customers out a little bit by showing them exactly what the import taxes are on this deal. They do the same thing with sales taxes. They've always done this with taxes. You know, when I lived in Oklahoma, I had to pay Oklahoma sales tax anytime I had anything delivered to Oklahoma on Amazon. And they always put the sales tax in there. Was that a political move? No. It's just it's just informing your customers how much you're spending and what it's going to. So, yeah. Is this something new for Amazon? No, I don't think so. But that's where you see a lot of this propaganda going on right now. And there's a lot of stuff going on, and it's coming from administrations, and it's also just coming from different folks all over the internet. So, you know, buyer beware when it comes down to what you see on social media. And I've got to check things myself too. There's been a couple of hot topic issues that's gone on. I've had to whoa, wait a minute, is this really going on? And a simple Google search will usually take care of that. It'll usually answer that problem for you or that question for you. But a lot of people don't do it. They just take what they see as the gospel truth on TikToks or Facebook or YouTube or whatever, right? And that's all the research they do on it. And that has become a problem. That's why we are so divided as a society in the United States. So here's another thing that has been popping up all over the internet. This whole deal of the ports look like ghost towns. That's not the case. That's not the truth. So here is a video from what's going on with shipping. That's the name of the YouTube channel, What's Going On with Shipping. And this was a very eye-opening video that I watched from them. I suggest you go watch their channel and just kind of inform yourself on it. But they do a little bit better in-depth research into this.
The idea that ships are not coming across bringing cargo, not true. Ships are coming into the U.S. The problem is the volume of the ships coming in is down and the cargo on board the ships is down. About a 10% blank sailing. In other words, about 10% of the vessels scheduled to sail are not sailing. But the ships that are coming in are starting to come in a bit lighter. That's being noted in ports in LA and Long Beach and up in Seattle and Tacoma. They give you metrics here about how long containers are sitting on the terminal. That was a big problem we saw happen during COVID when containers were sitting on the terminal for more than 9 days. You're getting your truck turnarounds. But the one chart I want to show you here is at the very end. This is the Port of LA weekly volumes for 2025. The light blue shows you for 2024. The purple shows you for 2025. And in the first part of the year, 2024, 2025, we're tracking pretty well. Matter of fact, we had a little bit of an uptick in the first quarter of 2025. So first quarter was a bit higher than what we'd seen in the previous year. We think that had a lot to do with cargo being front loaded across. Now, as we get into the tariffs season and what's going on with this, we're starting to see those drops.
So as you can see, you know, things are down a little bit. The number of ships are about at 10%. What did he say? And then a lot of those ships are not fully loaded like they normally are. So we are starting to see some things. Now here is Gene Soroka. He's with the Port of Los Angeles, and he's talking about what's going on right now, and he's also talking about what their projections are.
Becky. And yes, that's right. According to our own Port Optimizer, which measures the loadings in Asia, will be down just a little bit over 35% next week compared to last year. And it's a precipitous drop in volume, with a number of major American retailers stopping all shipments from China based on the tariffs.
So yeah, are we seeing a 10% reduction in the number of ships coming over from China right now, as per what's going on with shipping? Yeah, that's an accurate statement. Are they projecting that it could get worse if we stay on the same path that we are on right now, and Trump keeps a lot of these tariffs in place and they don't get this trade war with China worked out? Yeah, we could be looking at a big decrease, up to 30% is what he says. So yeah, could things get a little bit scarce on the shelves? They very well could. Things could start looking a little bit different. Now, we know that a lot of the stores, like, the Walmarts and the Targets and everything, they're not going to just sit around with empty shelves. They're better at their job than that. They're going to make things look better than what it is, unless they really are trying to make some political point. But something that I already noticed right away, I had to buy me a new pair of tennis shoes this week. And I don't like buying tennis shoes from here in the Philippines, right? Because they have what they call authentic replicas, all right? And I don't know, maybe I'm going to try a pair of these authentic replicas some days. I mean, they're legally sold here in the Philippines, so I can legally do this. And I may try them just to see how well they hold up, if they hold up compared to the real deal. But I still like wearing the real deal, and I'll order those from Amazon. Last week, I blew out a pair of tennis shoes, and so I'm in dire straits right now. I used a little shoe goo on my current pair of tennis shoes, and I immediately got on Amazon and I started looking for new tennis shoes, and I actually got me a pair ordered. They should be here this week sometime. But when I was doing my shopping on Amazon, I found out that half the stuff I looked at was out of stock. Like they would have them advertised, but they wouldn't have my size. And I've got a pretty common size. I wear a size 11, right? But they were out of stock. Or they might have a certain color, but they wouldn't have my size in it, and so on. So I don't know if this was always something that you ran into on Amazon. I don't remember that being an issue, but I also can't sit back and confirm it. But it's just a thought that I had coming up. I was like, you know what? It is something that I noticed the last time I was on Amazon is it seemed like my selection was down just a little bit. And I don't know, maybe that's part of it. All right, y'all. So on my channel, I try not to delve into politics a whole lot. I will talk about politicians I agree with or disagree with, to try to navigate the truth from the lies. But really the main purpose of this channel is to educate folks back in the United States about this wealth inequality that we have, this tremendous wealth inequality, and how it is going to become a huge problem later on down the road if we don't try to nip this in the bud. We're going to have to start coming together as a society, and we're going to have to start pushing for some changes, because we got a long road to hoe. We have let things get to a point where the rich just keep getting richer and the poor just keep getting poorer. And that's the purpose of this channel and my videos. But sometimes I do have to get in there and step into some politics. Like I've talked about in past videos, I'm very centrist when it comes down to things, and I'm going to call out the lies from both sides because they're out there. My personal opinion is, and I might as well just preface it right now, is that both the red and the blue are bought by the same people. Everything that you're seeing out there is just propaganda to keep us all fighting each other so that the rich just keep getting richer and the poor keep getting poorer. That's my 2 cents on politics. So what we've seen since Trump took office in January is we've seen a marked decline in the economy, especially the stock market. the value of the dollar. I see that on a personal basis living here and living abroad. Anybody that lives abroad can probably tell you it's the dollar has gone down just a little bit, even in value compared to like the Philippine peso, which the Philippines is a developing country, right? The value of the dollar compared to the Philippine peso has declined over the last 100 days. That's a fact. So these are things that we're all seeing. Just because you don't live in the United States doesn't mean you don't feel it. But this is definitely an issue that was caused by Donald Trump. Now, is his policies trying to rectify things that he believes were caused by Joe Biden and the Biden administration? I guess that's what he's doing. But the fact is this: the system that is in place in the United States today is something that didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen during the 4 years of Joe Biden. This has been something that has been going on for the last 45 years. You know, I'm Generation X. I remember going into TG&Y and going into Walmart, especially before when Mr. Walton still owned it, and they had signs all over the store that, you know, they prided themselves on made in the USA. You know, they sold everything that was made in the USA. And then after Mr. Walton died and his kids and the rest of the family took over, that's when jobs and everything started being shipped overseas. And so basically what we have seen over the past 45 years, and this just isn't a Walmart thing, this is something that's happened with all the big retailers. From all the retailers in the malls to box, you know, construction stores and everything else, right? Or home improvement stores, I guess. We've seen this across the board since the 1990s, where everything and all the manufacturing has been moved overseas. There's very few things that you buy in the stores that are still made in the USA. And we've seen that. And why did this come about? For one reason, pure greed, profit margins. And, you know, people want to talk about China and they want to dog on China and they want to say, well, you know, China's doing this, China's doing that. You got to understand, American companies went over there 40 years ago and started setting up shop, per se, or dealing with the Chinese to exploit their cheap labor. And that's all it came down to, was exploiting the cheap labor so that they could raise their profit margins. So this is where Americans really screwed up in the beginning. We didn't use our purchasing power correctly. We went right along with the psychological warfare that these billionaires and these companies use, and what do they call it? Marketing? It's basically psychological warfare, right? We have gone along with that, and we, instead of going, no, you know, we're not going to buy this stuff that's made in a foreign country in our stores. We're going to continue to buy stuff that's made in America, that's made in the USA. We're going to support American workers with our dollars. We're not going to buy this stuff made abroad. We're just not going to do it because we want to keep the factories here. You know, we should have seen this a long time ago and looked at history. Like back during World War II, when they converted clothing manufacturers and they converted car manufacturers and everything into wartime production. And that was really one of the ways that we were able to defeat the Axis powers during World War II, was we were able to outproduce them in the United States. And so right now, if we ever got into God forbid, we ever get into that kind of a situation again, we're at an extreme disadvantage compared to these countries like China, who can convert their factories into wartime production like we did. The United States have already done that. And any scholar of history, any country that is even remotely a scholar of history, would do the same thing that the United States did back in the 1940s, right? Well, Americans, the American consumer is part of the problem. We are half of the problem here because we were not wise about our spending. No, instead we just continue to go to Walmart and go, oh, look at this cheap stuff. Let's buy this cheap stuff that doesn't even last. And we became a throwaway society. You know, the TVs we buy now, they go to kaput. We don't take them to somebody that knows how to fix them, a mechanic or any kind of, entity like that. We just throw them away, put them in the dumps, and then we go buy another one because it's cheap. It's cheap crap, really. It's not that good. Whereas made in the USA used to mean something. You know, it was a quality product. When it came down to steel and everything else, we had some of the best made stuff in the world. But Americans didn't value that back in the 90s and up to present day. We've never valued that stuff, and we've just continued to buy the cheap crap. Well, by doing that, we have created this entire society now where we have cheap laborers, stagnant labor in the United States. If you look at the minimum wage, it hasn't gone up in over a decade. And part of the reason is because of this cheap consumerism that we created. We have been a part of this because we've been dumb consumers. We've allowed these big corporations to use their psychological warfare or their marketing, and it's worked, to get rid of our own jobs. I guarantee you there was probably people that worked in these factories still going to Walmart and buying stuff that was made in China. That's how ignorant we are. Whether it was a TV or something, and that's just craziness. I'll never understand that kind of stuff. And I've been just as guilty of it myself. But we have created that. And then in turn, we've created this deal where we have given these big corporations a reason and a ground to stand on for keeping our wages low. Because of this cheap consumerism that they have provided us, but has provided them some outstanding profit margins. And that's how these companies and these corporations have gotten filthy, filthy rich over the last 40, 45 years. So my point with this has all been an ongoing thing for the past 45 years. Okay, now that we've established that, this has been going on for a long time. And so how can one person who becomes president and in his second term decide, you know what, I'm going to change things. I'm going to right the wrongs of the past 45 years. And I'm going to do it immediately. I'm going to do it tomorrow. Things are going to change. And expect that to really work. And so with Donald Trump throwing on these tariffs and causing all this upheaval in the economies of nations all over the world, not just the United States, but all over the world, how do you expect that to really work? How do you expect to right the wrongs of the last 45 years and even 4 years? Through tariffs. And I get it. Maybe you're going to use them as a bargaining chip. I don't know. But it's not going to solve the problem. And it's definitely not going to bring factories and jobs and everything back to the United States. Not going to happen. You got to understand a good part of those jobs that left have now been completely taken away due to technology. So we'll never get those jobs back. And to use tariffs to do that, how can the tariffs actually be utilized to really do this in a good way? And I get it, a lot of you guys think Trump is the master negotiator and he's using the tariffs as a negotiating tool, which really doesn't make sense to me why you would hurt your voters, hurt the American people, and that's your bargaining tool. It doesn't make any sense to me. You would think there's a more civilized way of trying to do business, right? To get trade with other countries on a more favorable grounds. I don't know. Now, I will agree with Donald Trump whenever it comes down to the topic of should we bring manufacturing back to the United States. I totally agree with that we should. I've been preaching that for years and years and years before I ever had a YouTube channel. I used to talk about this a lot. And I used to hear people say, well, you know, you just can't get Americans to do those jobs anymore. Or, I mean, they'll give you all kinds of reasons why we shouldn't. Well, that's baloney. Americans will work. They'll do any kind of work. Look at the stuff they do around their own house. You know why they do it around their own house? Because it's too expensive to hire somebody to do the same work, you know? That was always my thing. Why did I change the oil on my own diesel truck and change the fuel filters on that thing every time I needed to service it? Is because it was too expensive for me to take it to a mechanic and have him do it. I know how to do that. I know how to pull filters off and put new filters back on, drain the oil and put new oil back in it. Not a problem. I also learned how to change brakes, and I learned how to do a lot of things that are expensive in the American society. There's a lot of people all over the United States that do that kind of work and no problems. They have no problems coming in with grease from their elbows down, or covered in dirt from digging post holes in their own yard or whatever. Americans will do the work, but you're going to have to pay them a fair wage to do the work. You can't pay them, you know, minimum wage or even below minimum wage and expect them to do that same work. And so, if you do bring these factories back to the United States, you are going to have to pay the American worker a fair wage to work in those factories. And a lot of people have, you know, we want to get back to that, 1950s era of where a person could go to work for a company and go to work in a factory, even though it might be redundant work and you're doing the same thing day after day, every day. So what? It's a good living and you're taking care of your family. And you have time to go bowling and drink a beer or two with your coworkers, or the softball games with your coworkers on a Friday night or Saturday afternoon. You know, people want to get back to that kind of stuff. And I definitely see the appeal. But you're going to have to pay the American worker a good wage to do that. And so when you do that, the price of whatever you're making is now going to have to go up. It's going to have to go up. Because, like here in the Philippines, the average daily wage is $7 a day. $7 per day. Not hour, per day. And a lot of these factories in Asia and Southeast Asia, that's what these factory workers are getting paid. So when you want to pay a factory worker in the United States $15, $16 an hour, the price of that thing just went up. Because if you think for a second that these companies are going to bring their manufacturing back to the United States and then lower their profit margin to boot, you got another thing coming. They're not going to do it. They've been enjoying these humongous profit margins for the last 40, 45 years. And so why on earth would they, just over 145% tariff, is 145% tariff enough incentive for them to bring that factory and to build that factory or retool an old factory and spend millions and millions of dollars to do this, when They can just keep buying that same thing from a factory in China, and then they can pass on that 145% increase in price onto the customer, and you guys will still pay it. You guys will still go to Walmart. And you say, no, I won't. Yeah, you will. Look at the stuff Walmart pulls on you people every freaking day. I mean, used to you'd go into Walmart and you had two people at the cashier. You had somebody cashing you out and you had somebody bagging your stuff. Now you got to go through the self-checkout, and you better, by God, hope you get your receipt, or you might get accosted at the door, right? And you're bagging your own stuff. Does it stop people from going to stores like that? No. You keep going. You keep buying. So what's a 145% increase in price going to do for you? Not a whole lot. Now, if Trump was putting a 500% tariff on a certain item, that might make a difference in your spending behavior. You're either not going to buy that product, and it might actually make that company move their production to the United States again. Maybe. Or they may just say, you know what, it's not even worth it anymore. And the product goes away. And we may see some of that happen. But that's going to be about the only thing. You've got to make an incentive for these companies to bring their factories back. But let's just say you do. They do bring it back. Now they're paying American workers a fair wage. Let's say $15 an hour to, to screw in screws or whatever the job is. I'm not I don't want to ever demean somebody that works. I don't care what you're doing. If you're working and you're getting out and you're earning a living every day, I don't care what you're doing. If you are digging ditches, who cares? I've done it myself. The price of these items is higher. You're going to have to start now thinking, okay, do I have enough money in my budget? But also, the companies are going to have to start thinking, I'm going to have to give my employees a raise, or they ain't going to be able to afford to do anything. I mean, they're not going to be able to afford to eat if I don't start giving them a bump up and raise. And so my point is, there's going to be this time. There's got to be this certain amount of time. And is it 1 year, 2 years? Is it 10 years? I don't even know. But there's going to be a certain amount of time when the wages and the price of things have to start kind of balancing out. The market has to kind of figure these things out. So, back in the early 1900s, we saw Henry Ford, right? Well, he realized that if he paid his workers a higher wage, then his workers could afford to buy the product that they were building. And so he did that, and it worked well for him. But it also worked well for the employees of Ford. They were able to increase their lot in life. They were actually have a better life. And so we've got to have this balancing thing that's going to have to work itself out over time. It's just part of it. And it's not going to be something that's done overnight. So whenever it comes down to Trump wanting to bring jobs back to America, I'm all in favor of that. I think it's something that needs to be done for national security. I don't think it should have ever been allowed to get like it is. I think our lawmakers should have grown some backbone back in the day and said, no, we cannot have our manufacturing going overseas. It's a matter of national security. But they didn't. They let the big corporations, they let big money buy them off, and they allowed this to happen. But then also, just like I've said just a minute ago, us as consumers, we allowed it to happen too. It's been all of Americans have a part of the blame in this. We all do. And so how do we fix it? Is it going to be Trump laying down blanket tariffs all over the world? No, it can't be done that way. The only thing you're going to do is hurt your own people. You're just taxing your own people is all you're doing. That's all it is. you've got to start bargaining things out. You've got to start having incentives for companies to come back to the United States. And if that means some tax breaks, and I'm not about tax breaks for the wealthy at all, but if we need to have those things to help them build their factories and so on, then we should. But we should also hold those corporations accountable and say, look, you know, the taxpayers helped you build this facility back in the United States and bring this back to America. The same taxpayers are demanding that you pay your workers a fair wage. And if they're not willing to do that, they don't get the tax break. It should be part of it. We should stipulate that. You see what I mean? If we want to do this, it's going to be a long process. Is it something that I think Americans need to happen? Yes. Do I think it can be done even in my lifetime? No. I've watched the majority of my lifetime with everything going the other way. And it's going to be my son's lifetime, hopefully, that he starts seeing the pendulum swing back the other way. You know, as far as Trump goes, hey, maybe this is a good thing that he's bringing this up. He's bringing it up to a national spotlight, right? I may not agree with his methods or his madness in this deal, but at least it's now becoming something that we're talking about. And there's a lot of people out there that agree that we need to bring manufacturing back to the United States. Whether you're believing that blindly because of what political party you're affiliated with, I don't know. It's not for me to decide. But at least it's being brought right up to the forefront of American news and everything else, because it hasn't been something that we've talked about. Nobody's cared about this for the last 45 years, and now people are. But we've got to do it in the right way. We can't sit there and alienate our trading partners, the countries that trade with us. We can't do that. And we need to get out of the practice of exploiting our trading partners. You know, two wrongs never make a right. But morals seem to go out the window when it comes down to business anymore. There's no ethics anymore. And so, yeah, it's acceptable. You know, we've got the whole attitude of, hey, don't hate the player, hate the game. You know. Well, if that's the case, then maybe we need to put some rules in the game so the players behave themselves. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. Again, I'm just a blue-collar kind of guy, but here's my common sense on it. All right, guys, tell me what you think. Agree, disagree, whatever, put it in the comments. I'll even myself address your comments. And if it's a good enough one, maybe I'll address it on video. All right, guys, I appreciate y'all tuning in to this video, and we'll catch you on the next one.